Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are very happy to have you this morning. My name is Judy Blake, and I am the Leadership and Advocacy Coordinator for Family to Family Network. We are having session 4 today of our Leadership and Advocacy classes. I am very happy to be having our presentations today. We have a lot to cover. I want to thank my amazing colleague, my right hand, who you cannot see today, but you want to say hello, Christina?
Yes, good morning to everyone. Sorry I'm not showing because my internet isn't stable, but I'll be here for you if you need anything.
And she looks beautiful. I can attest to that. I saw her earlier.
Thank you.
So we're so happy that you all joined us today. We know that it has been a very challenging time for everyone and a very busy week for everyone. So first up, we have an absolutely incredible presenter. I've known Michelle Howard for several years, and I must tell you, she is one of the most dedicated people to serving adults impacted by disabilities that I have ever met. And she truly believes in finding meaningful employment for people with disabilities. I can tell you that I have used her for my own son, and am in the process of using her for my own son. And once we are on the other side of this pandemic, she will be working with her team at Summer House Houston. She is the executive director of a wonderful nonprofit. Family to Family Network believes in collaborating with other amazing organizations like Summer House Houston. And she, with her team, will be working to find my son meaningful employment. One of her areas of expertise is educating families and adults about SSI and SSDI. And it's amazing because I've heard her presentation many times, and I love her style because she has that dry humor like I do. One of the many reasons I love you, Michelle. Also because she loves desserts like I do. Yes, and she loves dogs like I do. I mean, God, what could be better? Desserts and chocolate and dogs. But anyway, so let me introduce Michelle. She does have a lot of information to cover. So please write your questions in the chat box, and we will hold them until the end because Michelle does have a lot to cover. I've already sent you her slides because I know there is a lot of information to cover. And she will be presenting for about 40-45 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions and answers. So Michelle, if you want to go ahead and at the bottom of your screen, hit the share screen.
Yep.
And then we should be able to see your screen. There we go.
All right.
And then if you hit the, that says from the beginning, Groovy.
There we go.
Perfect.
Hey, good morning, everyone.
There you go. Thank you, Michelle.
All right. So like Judy said, my name is Michelle. I'm the CEO, Executive Director of Summer House. I started thinking about this whole SSI and SSDI thing years and years and years ago when I was working as an employment specialist and a program coordinator of an employment program. And it's not that I like math or anything, nor do I particularly like SSI and SSDI, but I just felt like it was a really ethical thing for me to learn because certainly when people are thinking about going back to work, they worry about losing their benefits. And there's so much misinformation out there that I just feel compelled to make sure that people really do understand this. You know, I always start with why is work so important for folks. Certainly there's the reasons, you know, for money and personal challenges and development of friends. But I think more than that, work really is about being an adult. You know, we assume or we make assumptions about adults that they work. And for people with disabilities, if we take that identity away from them, it's really hard for them to, you know, communicate and have friends. And, you know, I always think about, and I always tell the same story that when I first moved to Texas about 5 years ago, I decided to not work for just a little while. And I had never not worked my entire career. And I was just trying to get my daughter settled in school, and then I was going to start looking for employment. And one day I was walking around the dog park with my dog, because that's what you do when you're unemployed. And I was talking with this group of women, and they're always like, you know, what's the first question that anybody asks you? And it's always, well, what do you do? And for the first time in my life, I'm like, I don't know what I do. That's kind of scary. And so I just think that, again, that our reason, and you're going to be hearing a lot more about work later from Noreen and some other folks this afternoon, but I just wanted to make sure that we really think about this just being a central part of adult life. And that, you know, yes, there are day programs out there, and yes, there's other things that people can do, but that's not what adults typically do. We go to work. All right, so we're going to start with just some very basics today. I wish I would have done a poll, and I don't know how to put that in now, so I'm just going to ask you to hold up your fingers here. Let's say you have a question and you call Social Security office 3 times. How many answers do you get? Hold up your fingers here. 3 answers? 3? No, the answer's 5 at least, right? It's really, really hard to get a straight answer out of people in Social Security. So one of the things that I just want to clarify is that in Social Security, it's really important to know that there are 2 separate programs. And these 2 programs don't necessarily speak to one another. And there's very little in common with both of them, other than that they're all under the same roof of Social Security. And so don't always assume that the SSI people know what the SSDI people are doing and vice versa. It really is 2 separate programs, 2 separate staff, 2 separate everything. All right, so there's SSI and there's SSDI. SSI is from general tax revenues. It's a low income program, okay? It's basically a program to help people with disabilities with limited income and resources. The maximum that anybody is going to get from this program, they're not going to get rich on it, okay? Because right now in 2020, it's $783. That's going to go up. I can't remember. I wrote it down and I don't have it with me. It's going to go up a few dollars in 2021, but that's the maximum amount. It also is a program that keeps people poor because you can only have $2,000 in resources or $3,000 for couples, okay? So a lot of people are eligible for SSI. Sometimes you're eligible as a child and sometimes you're eligible for an adult as an adult, and we'll talk about that. But you're never going to get rich on SSI. And it really means supplemental security income. It assumes that people are going to work and that you're going to supplement your income because you're not making as much income with some SSI. The biggie and why SSI is really important to so many people is that in Texas, if you are eligible for SSI, you're automatically eligible for Medicaid. And that's the big deal. You definitely want Medicaid because you can get waiver services, you can get healthcare services. There's a whole lot attached to that. So even if you don't think that you need that $783 a month, it's always really important to have people apply for SSI. All right, so SSDI is a totally different program, and some people that you know will be on that instead, okay? This is the same program that's part of a larger program called Old Age Survivor Disability Insurance that all of us will get when we're 65 or 70 or however old they make it, if there's still money left for us. It's the same amount. I mean, it's the same program as that you or I will get when we turn 65. But there is a caveat in the SSDI program that says if you're a person with a disability, that you may be eligible for SSDI, also called Title II, prior to turning 65. And you can do this in a couple different ways. It may be that you have worked and paid into the system a little bit, or it could be that you have a parent who is deceased, retired, or disabled. So if you're a person with disability and you have a parent that is deceased, retired, or disabled, you may get SSDI instead of SSI, or you actually could get both. SSDI is based on, there isn't a certain amount that you get, it's based on how much you paid into the system. We all have this taken out of our paychecks, right? And so the amount that somebody gets is definitely based on how much you paid in. There are no resource limitations, so it doesn't keep people poor, and the health insurance attached to it is Medicare. They're very different programs. It is possible to have both, which is called concurrent benefits, and we'll talk about that just in a little bit more. Other basic differences here, just these are definitions. There's Medicaid, there's Medicare. Medicaid is attached to SSI, Medicare is attached to SSDI, okay? Medicaid is a jointly funded federal state health insurance program for low income and needy people. It covers children, people who have disabilities, and other people who are eligible to receive that income, okay? The coverage begins immediately as soon as somebody is eligible for SSI. One of the things that Texas actually does fairly well is you don't have to reapply for Medicaid. Once you get SSI, you automatically get Medicaid. And it's really important to remember that Medicaid coverage can continue even when a person goes to work. And so even if a person goes to work and they start losing some of their SSI benefits because of that, they can keep their Medicaid, and there's different ways to do that. Medicare is a totally different bird, okay? It is the same insurance that you and I are probably going to be on at 65 and older. But again, remember, certain younger people with disabilities may have SSDI, so they may be eligible for Medicare. There's a 24-month waiting period for that, so it's not immediate. I think there's that assumption because it really is for people who are retiring. That's what the basic assumption of it was, is that you know, that somebody's going to be like on COBRA for a couple years before they need Medicare. There's lots of different parts of Medicare. There's Part A, there's Part B, there's Part C. Some of those are free and covered, and some of them you can pay into. So again, real different. You're going to notice on my slides that anytime we're talking about SSI and Medicaid, the slide is going to be blue. And anytime we're talking about SSDI or Medicare, the slide is going to be green. Or if things apply to both, you'll see both down there. So we'll try to keep that separate. If you are all in the room together, I might even make you sit whether you're the SSI group or their SSDI group. But a lot of people sit in the middle because they don't have a clue. All right, we're going to continue with just some basic definitions here. I apologize if I'm going fast, but there's a lot to cover here. If you have a son or daughter that has gone through school, you think that you understand the definition of disability, and usually that means that the person receives some type of special services or special education in the school. And then all of a sudden, you go to Social Security or the Social Security office and you're applying for these benefits, and they have a totally different definition of disability. And so that's something really important to remember, that just because a person has special education services does not necessarily mean that they are going to be eligible for SSI or SSDI. Disability under the Social Security system is based on a person's inability to work in what they call substantial gainful activity, which is currently $1,260 per month, okay? Now, for a child, the disability must be severe compared to the abilities of their peers. But for an adult, they have to show that they cannot earn substantial and gainful activity. So let's say that you have a person who uses a wheelchair for mobility, and they were able to receive some special services or special education. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. In school. But then they did really well in school, and what they want to do is work on computers. Well, just because they had special education in school, Social Security may not consider them disabled, because they're like, well, just because you use a wheelchair doesn't mean that you can't earn substantial and gainful activity. So just be aware of that it's sometimes they look at it very, very differently. This down here is very important, that SSA will reevaluate at age 18 to determine the adult definition of disability. There's situations where a child might be considered disabled, but then once they become an adult, like I said, they're not. There's also the reverse of true, that because perhaps of earning potential of the parents, that a person was not eligible as a child, but they become eligible as an adult. So it's always important to remember that those definitions of adult and child can change your status of whether you're eligible for any kind of disability or not. All right, last definition here, and then we'll move on to the good stuff. And you don't need to know all of this, but just know that Social Security, both SSI and SSDI, talk in terms of earned income and unearned income. And they treat those very differently in all of their complicated formulas, right? And so just be aware that at some point when you're in there talking that they're going to say, well, is this earned income or is this unearned income? Because they're going to treat it differently. Earned income is basically wages. It is payments for services in a sheltered workshop. It's earnings for self-employment. Unearned income is all of that other stuff, workers' compensation, unemployment, SSDI, any kind of VA pension, and they're going to treat those differently. All right, so let's talk about SSI for just a minute. So you'll notice that this is all blue here, and so we're only going to be talking about SSI. Determining SSI for a child, they're going to look at the parent's income, the parent's resources, the number in the family, okay? And so there's many children that are not eligible for SSI when they are under 18 because of their parents' income. But once they turn 18, it is based on their own income, their own income and their own resources. And so there's many, many people that become eligible at 18 that were not eligible before. Now, here's the thing. It's not like SSI. Let's say you applied once when the child was 6 or 7 and you had too much family income that you didn't get it. It's not like SSI is going to contact you at 18 and remind you to come back in and reapply, right? You need to remember to do that. And you also need to do it the month after they turn 18. And the reason for that is that if you go in the month they turn 18, they will still base it on your income or the parent's income. So always you want to go in the month after. Now, this is also the reverse. Let's say that as a child, you did receive SSI, okay? You still have to go through a redetermination on that month after you turn 18. And so SSI may not contact you for that. You need to stay on top of it because you don't want to be in that situation that you get into some kind of overpayment that, you know, at 18 they determine them not eligible and yet you continue to get those checks. And then you're in a whole heap of a mess because you've gotten into an overpayment situation. So this is SSI. This is how they're going to determine SSI. 3 criteria. Disability have to be expected to last at least 12 months, be lifelong, or result in death. So you can't get SSI if you break your arm. Resources, you have to have less than 2,000, and you cannot be earning that substantial gainful activity, that $11.60 a month. And you need medical proof. Now, they really don't care about things like all your IEPs and all your ITPs from school. They really only care about documents from people with letters after their last name. So physician, psychiatrist, OT, PT. So you're going to gather up all of that and take it in either as a child or the month after they turn 18. All right. Everything that I just told you, forget for a minute. Now we're going to move on to eligibility for SSDI. Totally different bird, totally different program, okay? To qualify for Social Security disability benefits yourself, you have to have worked in jobs and paid in enough quarters. This happens sometimes if a person with this disability gets a job and they're working, you know, after high school and they work for a couple years and all of a sudden they get this notice that they could be eligible for SSDI because they're a person with disability that is paid into the system themselves. And so they may be able to start drawing on their Social Security disability way before they turn 65 because of that caveat in there that for people with disabilities. Some adults may be on SSI, like I said, and then start working and then eventually be eligible for SSDI under their own accounts. A child or an adult with disability may also be eligible for SSDI payments if their parents or spouse is retired, deceased, or disabled, and they paid in enough work credits. And so let's say that you have an adult child on SSI and they, they're 20 years old, and then all of a sudden one of the parents retires or dies or becomes disabled themselves. That child may become, or that adult child may become eligible for SSDI. The government in general would rather have you on SSDI than SSI because SSDI, people have paid into that system. Remember, that's the same thing that we're all paying into that they take out of our check. Where SSI is purely, really government money. And so they're always going to be looking to see if they can move you over to SSDI. A lot of times when people first apply for services, let's say you go in and you're applying for SSI, they're always going to see if you are eligible for SSDI first. And so that first denial letter you get, don't necessarily think that they're denying you for SSI. What they've done is they've run you through the system to see if you have a parent who is disabled, deceased, or retired. And so the first denial letter you get usually is a denial from SSDI. Then you get your eligibility for SSI. All right, how much to expect? Again, nobody's really getting rich here at all. For SSI, the maximum that you're going to get is $783. Now, again, I can't see all of you, but if you have a child or even an adult's child, okay, that is living with you, and they are not getting the total 783, but they're getting like a 522 instead, let me tell you the reason why they're doing that, okay? Because this is what happened. When you took them in to apply for benefits, after they turned 18, they started asking you questions like, oh, do they live with you? And you're like, yes. And you take care of them? Well, of course I do. I'm their parents. Well, whack, all of a sudden you're only getting 2/3 of it because they're saying that you're covering the rest. What you need to say is, yes, they live with me. Yes, I love them, but they're over 18 now and I expect them to pay their fair share. And you need to do some type of room and board agreement or some type of affidavit that says, and you really do need to do this, out of their SSI check needs to come some amount that you've determined to pay for their fair share. And that has to kind of make sense. So let's say you have 4 people living in the household and somebody's fair share would be 1/4 of whatever the mortgage or the rent payment would be. So it needs to somehow make sense. It can't be more than $783. Their fair share can't be more than that because SSI will go, well, they can't afford to live with you. So usually somewhere around that $500 or $600 range will work. I always say don't make it an even number. And I know that Family to Family on their website has a sample room and board agreement and some sample paperwork for this. Now let's say you're only getting the 522 and you're like, oh wow, I really screwed up. I said I loved my kid and was taking care of him, and so now I'm going to be 522 forever. Not necessarily. You can go back in and you can appeal that and you can go, I've really thought about this and I do believe now that that person is an adult that they need to be paying their fair share, and here's the documentation to do that.
Michelle, if I could just interject. So unfortunately, the Family to Family website was hacked into.
Oh, no.
Why somebody would ever want to hack into a nonprofit website is beyond me. Like, does somebody not have better things to do with their time? So if you would like a copy of the room and board agreement, please email me. Telling me in the chat box today does not count because my brain is on overload. So please email me and I will send you a copy of the room and board agreement.
Yeah. I have that also, and my email is on the beginning of this, so I can send it too. So.
Yes, but yeah, by all means. And then someone had already asked a question that I wanted to address, and I think I already know the answer is they will be having guardianship over their child. And Dustin Reinders had already talked about guardianship in session 3. Mm-hmm. So they were asking when their child turns 18, is the income of the guardian taken into account? And my answer was no.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, that is correct. No.
Okay.
That once they turn 18, it is just their resources and their income that is taken account, regardless of guardianship status.
Got it. Thank you.
SSI and SSDI, they don't really recognize the whole guardianship status other than just to sign papers. And even so, like if you're calling about questions and stuff, they really prefer to talk with the person themselves. All right, so how much to expect? So we've said 783 or 522 for SSI. For SSDI, it could be as little as, you know, $100. It could be a whole bunch. It could be up to 1,234 per month, because it all depends on how much was paid in by whoever account that they're looking at. Okay. So the average Social Security disability benefit for a recipient of Social Security SSDI in 2019 was 1,234. The base rate is, if you're a child with a disability or an adult child with a disability, it's 50% of a living parent's SSDI or 75% of a deceased parent. Now, it is important to remember that if you retire and you start getting SSDI, and then that flips your adult child with a disability over to SSDI, it does not impact how much you get. It just, they will start getting 50% of what you get, but it doesn't hurt you, if that makes sense. I think some people worry about that. They're like, oh my gosh, you know, they're gonna take my SSDI, and no, that's not how it works. Certainly, you've probably heard the stories of a guy who has multiple wives, not at the same time, but let's say they're married for 10 years and then they get divorced, and they're married for 10 more, and they get divorced and they're married for 10 more. Anytime that any wife who has been married at least 10 years is eligible for 50% of of the guy's SSDI when they retire, as long as they haven't remarried themselves. So there's, you know, it's all about formulas, and it's all about that. So again, the monthly amount, we're talking about how much to expect. I can't tell you that under SSDI because it all depends. Now, it is possible to have both. And the way that this works is, let's say somebody's parent did retire, but they didn't have that much. They had not worked their whole life, and so they didn't have that much in there. So let's say it was determined that they got $300 SSDI, okay? Well, the person can still be eligible for SSI because they're gonna get that difference in SSI between the 783 and the 300 that they're getting in SSDI. It's a little more complicated than that with the formula, but in general, they could get an SSI check and an SSDI check. Now, that sounds all nice, but it's also a very convoluted mess because you have to understand both the SSI rules and the SSDI rules as you're going through everything, and they're not the same. All right, let's talk about what can the money be used for real quick. For SSI, you have to think food, shelter, and clothing, okay? You got to keep receipts. You could get audited. And so if, let's say, the adult child goes in, they're starting to get that 783 a month, you need to show, okay, well, 500 of it went in a check to me to cover their fair share of rent, 200 of it went to, you know, food, 83 of it went to clothing or whatever. You have to show those receipts. Now, you're not going to be turning in the receipts each time, but you need to keep them because you could be audited. Okay, you can't go to Disneyland, unfortunately, on your SSI check. Doesn't work that way. SSDI payments don't have to be accounted for. You don't have to keep receipts for those, because just like you or I, when we retire, nobody's going to ask us to, you know, ask us how we're spending our retirement or SSDI. So again, think food, clothing, shelter for SSI. And lastly, before we kind of move into the work portion of this, for both SSI and SSDI, if you are not found eligible the first time, appeal. only about 30% of initial claims are approved, okay? The local office doesn't really do the approval. Basically, you take in everything, you know, this is, the person's either not earning any wages or they're earning a little bit of wages, or you're taking in all your documentation to prove their disability. You're giving it all to them. The only thing the local office is doing is making sure that they're not working at substantial gainful activity. Then they send it off to these people that I don't know who they are, and they are all in Austin, and they're like the Wizard of Oz people behind a curtain, right? And they send it off to Disability Determination Services for a medical review. So these people behind the curtain sit and try to figure out whether you're going to be able to get benefits or not. The biggest reason for denials is incomplete or missing forms, or forms not returned within a 15-day window. So that's an issue. Let's say you turn in all your paperwork and then your whole family goes on a 10-day vacation. Well, you get back and they've already sent you stuff, and sometimes they mail it, sometimes they call you, sometimes they email you. And I've never quite figured out when and why and where, you know, why they do those different things. But, you know, they want another piece of information and you don't have time to get it within that, you know, few days that you have left. Bam, you're basically not eligible, and you have to appeal that. So just remember that anything that they send you, you have to respond to within a 15-day window, or you're going to be automatically denied. Another huge reason for denial is often due to email or phone or address changes. You know that a lot of times maybe you've put down your home phone number as the phone number, but then you get rid of your home phone because you're just using your cell phone, or you lose your cell phone or whatever. They're trying to call you. If they can't get a hold of you, they're not going to try very hard to track you down. And so again, that's another reason for a denial. If your initial claim is denied, the next step in Texas is to seek a reconsideration. Don't run out and hire an attorney yet, okay? Because remember, only 30% of them actually go through the first time. If your request for reconsideration is denied, and you can do that online, okay, you can just go through and fill out a reconsideration form on the SSA website, then the next step is to ask for a hearing with an administrative law judge. You can even do that yourself, because again, a lot of times it's about missing paperwork or something that didn't get in on time. It is real important to know that appeals have to be made within 60 days. And so you can't sit on this. You got to keep at it. I always tell people that, you know, if you've gone through the reconsideration and you've gone through one appeal and you're still not getting it, then is the time that you might want to contact an attorney. You know, but at least do the first couple phases yourself, because it's not worth paying for when it's just because you've forgotten a form or they haven't been able to get a hold of you. Now, this is something really important to remember, and this happens to people more often than you would guess. So let's say you go in and you apply for benefits. They run you through the SSDI, and you're not eligible for that because you don't have a parent that's deceased, retired, or disabled. So then they start running you through SSI, and your first initial claim is denied, okay? And then you ask for reconsideration, and that gets denied. And then you get a hearing, and then, you know, let's say you started this whole process in January, the month after the person turned 18, and long about August, this great big check shows up because they go back and pay you from when you initially applied once you win your appeal. Now that sounds really nice and great. You get this great big check. The problem is you put it in your bank, you put it in the person's bank account, and all of a sudden they have over $2,000 resources and they're not eligible for SSI anymore. Happens all the time. It's called a windfall. What do you have to do? Basically, you got 30 days to spend it on food, clothing, or shelter, okay? Because you can't have more than $2,000 resources in your bank account. So you want to take it and you want to go to Sam's Club and you want to buy toilet paper for life, and you want to buy a new mattress, and you want to buy some new clothes and winter clothes, even though we live in Houston, and you want to spend that down within 30 days. Because if not, you're going to be back to the whole start And you're going to have to start your whole claim over again because you're going to lose it because you had more than $2,000 in resources. So just be aware that that happens. All right. What I really want to talk about today, now that we've kind of gotten through the basics, is, okay, I've spent all this time, I finally got on SSI or SSDI, finally starting to get the checks, and then somebody like me comes along and goes, you know what, your son or daughter really should have a job because working is really important. And you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to go there because I'm so afraid of losing the SSI or SSDI that took me so long to get. I understand, but it's important to take a breath and realize that it is quite possible, very, very possible, to still work and still receive your benefits, okay? And how it works on SSI is very different than how it works on SSDI, so I'm just going to quickly kind of go through that for you. On SSI, I can say without a doubt, you are always better off working, always. No matter whether you work full-time or part-time, you are always going to be better off working on SSI because of their formula, okay? For basically, it's a little more complicated than this, but for every $2 you earn, they only count $1 of it. So you're always still better off. But you have to watch the resource limitations. If you're going to keep your SSI while you're working, you still have to keep less than $2,000. So you may have to look at something like a PASS or an ABLE account or something else in order to be able to save money. Your SSI checks will go up and down each month based on how much you earn, okay? So you have to report them every month, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Now, I'm going to move ahead to the next slide, and I just want to show you easily how this works, okay? So let's say I'm on SSI and I get a job and I start making $1,200 a month. They have this formula that they take off 65 for earned income and 20 for unearned income. Don't ask me where those numbers came from. They've been those same numbers for a billion years. It's just the way it works. Then they take that income, so this again, this is your paycheck, and they cut it in half. And so they say your total countable income is $557.50. You're with me so far? All right. So the federal benefit rate, like we've talked, the max that you can get is $783. So they subtract that countable income. And so your new SSI amount, because you're working, is $225.50. And you're like, oh no, that's horrible. I used to get $783 and now I only get $225. But wait, you actually have your entire check. You have your $1,200 plus your $225.50. So you are always, always better off working in SSI. Now, people go, what if this number gets to 0? And I don't know exactly what number this has to be to get this to 0. You can still keep your Medicaid, and that's really important, and we're going to talk about that. So there are some work incentives that make this even a little more enticing to go ahead and work. There can be some impairment-related work expenses. So let's say that somebody needs special transportation. They're using MetroLift to get to work and back, or maybe medication copays or something, medical devices. So basically, if something is an impairment-related work expense, meaning that you have to have it for work and you have to have it because of your disability, you can take it off in this formula. And so basically half of it, you put it right here, half of it comes off. And so let's say that you have $200 in expenses that are impairment related work expenses that only you're going to be able to subtract $100 of those. And so your countable income would be $657. I'm sorry, it would be $457 instead. And your check would be $325.50 instead of $225.50. There is also something called a student earned income exclusion, which is really, really important for students under 22 that are regularly in school, university or any kind of technical training. They have an amount that they can earn that doesn't count in that formula at all. So they can make $1,900 per month, but not more than $7,670 a year. and it
Michelle,
doesn't count. Yeah,
excuse me for interrupting. What about if they're still in high school, like in one of those mosaic programs?
yes, as long as they are under 22.
Okay, so they
Yes,
can still collect SSI.
they're full SSI and they can still work as long as they're under that 1900 per month.
Okay, thank you.
Which is a really good deal. And I always tell parents that, people should get summer jobs. People should get, a part-time job after school, because it really allows them to get some vocational experience and it doesn't impact their SSI. And so anything that they can do in the summer, real important. There are also some other work incentives that we're not going to have time to go through all of these today, but there's something called a PASS. Whereas these other work incentives, like the impairment related work expense and the student earned income exclusion, these are things that you can just do yourself. So when you turn in your pay stubs, you're going to turn in also the receipt for your IRWI, and you're going to write IRWI really big on it. Or when you turn in your income for being a student, you're going to write student earned income on it so that they know that that's what it is. A PASS is a little different than that. It's a little bit more complicated. You have to have it approved first. And it's a way to kind of set aside money for something that you want to do later vocationally. And I always recommend that if you're really going to go that route, that you find some help to do that. There are some good programs online that can help you develop a PASS. There's also people called CWICs. And the CWICs here in Houston are at the Center for Independent Living, and they can help you do a PASS. And so again, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that because it is a little bit more complicated. It can be a wonderful tool in order to be able to save money for a future vocational goal, but it is something that has to be approved in advance, and it's a little bit more complicated. What I want to spend a little bit more time on is 1619B, because this is critical. Remember I was saying, back to our formula here. When this gets down to close to 0, you're at risk of losing your Medicaid. Because remember, in order to be Medicaid, you have to be on SSI. So when this gets close to being 0, there's something very simple that you can do, and it's called a 1619B letter. Basically, you write a letter to Social Security and you say, I'm working now and I'm doing really well, and my SSI checks are getting pretty close to 0. However, I still have a disability and I still need my Medicaid, so put me on 1619B. It's just a little checkbox in their computer. If you go on 1619B, you can earn up to $34,000 annually. That's huge. A lot of the folks that we work with, don't earn $34,000 annually. And even if you would, there's another option to do a Medicaid buy-in. So again, it's ways to keep your Medicaid. This is probably one of the most important things that I'm going to say today is just, yes, you can keep your Medicaid even if you lose your SSI because of benefits, because of working, I'm sorry. All right. Everything I just said, forget for a minute, because now we're going to talk about SSDI. How SSDI handles work is totally different than SSI. There's none of this going up and down and always better off. SSDI is an all or nothing program, okay? But you get about 4 years before you have to worry about it. So the way this works is the first 9 months in 60, a rolling 60, so it doesn't have to be 9 months in a row, the recipient can earn as much money as they want, and it doesn't affect that SSDI check, okay? But every month that they earn $910 or more, it's considered to be one trial month. So a little box gets checked, okay? Once 9 boxes are checked, you get a couple months grace period where you're still getting your check. Then you go into something called extended period of eligibility. And how this works is that for the next 36 months, so 3 years, every time that you earn under substantial gainful activity, that 1260, you get your SSDI check. Every time that you earn over SGA per month, you don't get it. So again, this gives you 3 more years to kind of determine whether you can work or not, and at what level, without you risking losing it completely. So again, for 3 years, any month that you earn over SGA, okay, you're gonna not get your check. Every month that you earn under SGA, you are gonna get your check.
Michelle,
Now, yes.
let me just interject there. But if you're not getting one check, aren't you getting the other check? Meaning the SSI check?
Only if you're only getting your SSI check if your SSDI is more than 783. I mean, under 783.
Right, okay,
Right, yes.
okay. I
But
just don't want
remember,
people thinking they're not gonna get anything.
right, they're still getting their SSI, but if somebody's getting close to that 1260, their SSI is going down too.
Right, right.
So it's going up and down. The SSDI is staying stable, but it's either yes, you're getting it, or no, you're not getting it each month. I know this is confusing. I always thought that, you know, if you put a bunch of people in one room together and you ask them to come up with the most complicated, convoluted system, they could not do as well as Social Security has done. I'm not going to talk about the ABLE program. That's a whole other thing. But I do want to share just a little bit more information here. It is very, very important to keep Social Security updated about any changes to your employment status, as well as your address, your email, and your phone number. The beneficiary is responsible for reporting their wages, okay, for the month prior. Now, the best way, they say, is to physically take it to the local SS field office and have it date stamped, or send it certified mail. However, if the thought of going to the Social Security office once a month for the rest of your life is enough to make you jump off a bridge, it would be me. There are other ways to report income, okay? You can go to the post office once a month and send it certified mail. That's a little less painful than going to the Social Security office every month. They also now have telephone and mobile apps. And it used to be that it was only available for SSI, but I believe now that they've just started it also for SSDI. And Judy, maybe you know this. I have heard just recently that it used to be that when you were reporting by phone or mobile app, you couldn't write off things like IRWIs, but now you can?
Yes, that is true. You can, provided that it is already set up in their system. Now with the pandemic, you know, all bets could be off. But once I had gone in and visited with the person, they had it set up. And just so the group knows, when my son was working pre-COVID, he was taking a ride service. So they were deducting as part of IRWI, which is income related work expense, $60 a month that I was paying to get to his job. So that was already included as an income related work expense. So yes, I could use the app.
As long as they already had that in their system.
Exactly.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Reporting each month is the best protection from an overpayment. You do not want to get into a situation that you owe them a whole bunch of money back. I worked with this gentleman one time that he was on SSDI, and somehow he got a job full-time as a janitor at the Pentagon, and he was working away and they never caught up with him, so he was getting his SSDI check for years, and he was getting his income, which was well over substantial gainful activity for years. And so when he turned 65 and went in to apply for Social Security as a retired person, they gave him a bill for almost $100,000. So you always want to report every month. The other thing is, if you don't remember anything I said today, do this for me. Request a copy of your BPQI each year. BPQI is a benefits planning query. Beneficiaries can request a copy at their local office or by calling that number. And basically what that does is it shows you exactly what's in the system. And you want to make sure that that's a reality. So like if we ran one on Judy's son, we would see, oh, the IRWI is already in there. That's good. They have that in their system. If it's not, it's like, oh, we need to worry about that. As a person that does benefits counseling, which I will do on the side with people, I won't really even talk to someone about their benefits until they have gotten their BPQI, because I want to see what's reality and what's really in the system before I give any type of advice. So you can get one every year. I suggest you get one just to start, and then every year that a person's working, and you just make sure they're very easy to read, and you just make sure that what is in their system is actually real, because it is way too easy for them to get wrong information. And with that, I can take questions. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to say is that as complicated as Social Security is, their website is actually really good. So whoever developed their website is not the same people who created Social Security and all their rules and regulations. And so you can go to the ssa.gov website and just type in a question and the answer comes up. I mean, it's amazing. So they really do have a good one. The ARC of Greater Houston, I think on their website still has a whole bunch of, when I used to work there, I put them there, so I'm assuming it's still there, has a whole bunch of kind of fact sheets and different things, as well as a copy of this presentation, but it's probably a couple years old at this point. All right.
So Michelle, if you could stop share. Oh, perfect. You already did. You're good.
I did.
So what I want to share with you all before we take a few questions is everything that Michelle mentioned to you has happened to me. I mean, I kid you not. One of the many reasons I love Michelle. I would call and I would get one answer. I would go into the office and I would get another answer. I would get a letter that gave me a third answer. I would get a letter that was dated on a Thursday and it said, we are going to be calling you on a Tuesday. That was the Tuesday before. You know, I don't live in the past. I live in the present, you know, or the future if you want to schedule a phone call with me. So everything that happened to me. Now, I was one of the lucky people the first time I applied for SSI for Ryan. I did get it. That was the only thing that worked. I cannot stress enough the importance of working. I will tell you, if you are a parent that does not want your son or daughter to work for whatever reason, that is your choice. I support you. Just please have them doing something. What we don't want is that your son or daughter is graduating to the living room couch. To me, that is not a meaningful life for anyone. Right now, my son, and Marianne, we'll get to your question in 1 second. Right now, my son, because of the pandemic, has been indoors except for when we take our walks and I can get him to go out. You know, that's a different story. I completely understand that. But once there's a vaccine, and he's already told me I will not be the first person to get a vaccine, Mom. I'm like, okay, fine. So I'm pretty realistic and I figure it's going to be probably, you know, a year from now by the time we really have a safe vaccine. And that is really a long time. That's awful to me, but that's the reality. So I truly believe that everyone in this world can do something, and it's organizations like Summer House Houston that make sure that happens. And something else I want to mention, I know that Michelle talked about so much information and it was very, very overwhelming. And I completely understand that. This is probably the 8th or 10th time I've heard Michelle, and I'm still like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. So when she mentioned about the SSDI, I'm going to share a quick story. Social Security sends me a letter and says, so your son, Ryan Blake, has earned enough and he is now eligible to receive SSDI. He has earned enough, so he, not SSI anymore, SSDI. Please fill out these forms. Great. I do everything that they tell me to do. They send it off to Austin, like Michelle said. It goes to the Wizard of Oz, like Michelle said. I even talked to the people in Austin. They said I did everything correctly. They then, because remember, this is Social Security, so, you know, you talk to 3 different people, you get 5 different answers, like Michelle said. And that woman said it was the local office that made the answer, not Austin. Yeah. So they tell me that it was the local office that denied Ryan. Well, you're the ones who told me to begin with that he was eligible. So what did I do? I appealed the other day. 45 minutes out of my life I'll never get back. Filling out online forms. But, you know, I'm like exercising my right to appeal because they were the ones who, you know, opened up the can of worms and said that he was eligible for SSDI. And do you know the reason that they claimed, the local office, that he was not eligible for SSDI? Because that small window of time that he was eligible, because remember, he's not working now because of COVID, he hadn't gone to a doctor. So that means his autism went away in 3 months? Really? His Tourette's, his obsessive compulsive disorder, his anxiety, his akathisia, all of that went away in 3 months. Boy, wouldn't life be grand then? And that was the reason.
You know, I'm a little bit surprised when you told me that, because typically Social Security wants people to go on SSDI versus SSI, because SSDI somebody has paid into already, and SSI is purely kind of welfare money.
Michelle,
but
go figure. I mean, they even sent the letter that said, yes, we contacted your doctors at Baylor, we contacted your doctors at UT. I said, is there anything I could have done differently? Oh, no, Ms. Blake, you did everything just right. Well, I'm so happy to know I passed the SSDI course. You know, so it's just a very, very frustrating system. So let me see, did we get, okay, so.
There's one question here. It says, what if someone receives SSI or SSDI, works, loses eligibility, can they reapply years later for benefits? Absolutely.
Yes,
Yeah, you can always reapply. Yeah.
Yes, great question. Mid, I think I answered your question.
Wait a minute, I gotta find where to chat.
So somebody had asked, oh, I already answered that one. Okay, so any other questions? Please write them in your chat box or unmute yourself, because our next presenter is on, and since she is on, lucky us, we're going to take another quick group picture. Isn't everyone so excited? And I see Mom. Hi, Mom. Okay, Cynthia Reese wrote, it took 6 months for SSA to finally recognize my son's wages earnings yesterday. I called it in, faxed and mailed it, and his earnings were not being acknowledged and we're not receiving letters saying, thank you for letting us know. Yep, that's true.
Yep.
Hello?
Whoops, somebody needs to mute themselves. Somebody at the local office said they were way behind. My son has been receiving the max overpayment since June. It's shaking ground. I'm waiting for a letter saying they've caught up and my son's check is 0. So yes, Cynthia, that is very scary. So I bet I know what office you have been going through, because that's the office I go through. And they will tell you, when I was faxing them in and receiving the documentation, they will say, ma'am, do you know how many faxes we get? There's no way we can keep up. To which I want to say, that's really not my problem.
That's
The app is your best bet, because then you get a letter from Social Security saying, yes, we have received your records. But Michelle, I'll let you comment on that.
Well, I was just going to say, I have heard that because of COVID, they are way, way behind. Couple things as I'm looking here. If they're on SSI and you think that check is going to go to 0, you've got to make sure that they're on 1619B. You've got to get that clicked in the system so they can keep their Medicaid. The other thing is that if you're ever in a situation that you get this great big overpayment, you can appeal that, and they can, take just a tiny bit out each month, so you do not have to pay it back all at once.
Right.
So just remember that.
I know somebody else who had to do that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that's huge. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
And Cynthia, please know you can always reach out to us, because if Michelle is not able to assist you, I do know other people as well. The other day she said that my son converting to SSDI may impact his class waiver.
No, usually there's something called, and I don't remember the term of it, but basically, if you're on the class waiver, you're going to go ahead and keep your Medicaid.
Mm-hmm.
You may also be eligible for Medicare because of the SSDI, but you should be able to keep the Medicaid for sure.
Yes, 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 absolutely. So before we let Michelle go, we're going to take another picture. And Noreen, if you could show your pretty face. Hello, Ricky. I see you on. So, and we're going to take a quick 5-minute break. Before we do that, let's take another picture, because I know everybody loves to take pictures. Yeah. I see Marianne and Jeff and Lisa. Oh boy, everyone's having good hair days now. Claudia, I see your son. Oh, she's got that hair look, and oh, how pretty. And LaShonda, hi, Noreen. And Johanna. Okay, so we're going to do 1, 2, 3. Hold on, I screwed that up again. God, Judy, you are pathetic. Okay, hold on. 1, 2, 3. Did I do it right? Oh, God, what is my problem? Hold on, one last time. I know you all are ready to shoot me. Don't worry, I'm ready to do that to myself. Okay. Okay, 1, 2, 3. There we go.
All right.
Okay.
Well, you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And Judy, always good to see you. Hi, Noreen.
Michelle, thank you for all that you do. We are so grateful to you.
Bye.
Hello,
Yeah.
hello.
It's great to follow on your heels. Hey, Judy, I took a couple of pictures in case yours didn't show up.
Yeah, great, because I don't know what my deal is, but
Okay. Are you going to help me get on, figure out how to get my PowerPoint on your Zoom?
Yes, I am. So everyone, it is
They're going to take a break.
10:15, so at 10:20.
Oh, thank you, Judy.
Thank you, Nedra. Hi, Mom. Hi, Maria. Thank you, Maria. So, oh, everyone, before you go, Michelle, you can go. So, everyone, before you go, don't go just yet, Nedra. So, hold on, don't go. So, I put in a form for the survey. So, hold on 1 second. Let me send it again. Hold on. Let me copy and paste it. Hold on. Okay, so the please take the survey. I am copying and paste it again. Whoops.
So you sending that to my email, right?
Hold on. Nedra, hold on 1 second. Yes, I will be sending it to everyone's email. Hold on.
Okay.
But it's also in the link. So you all received an advocacy and documenting form. So when I send out the email, I'm also going to attach again the advocacy documenting form. And what that is that since we've been taking these classes these last couple of months, my hope is that maybe in a phone conversation, in an email, in a text, in a Zoom call, maybe you have talked to somebody about person-centered thinking, person-centered planning. Maybe you have mentioned to them about supported decision-making. Maybe you have talked to them about person-first language. So if you could take a picture of the form, you can text it to me, you can scan it, you can email it to me. But this is how we get more grant funding, because they need to know that the information that you're learning, hopefully you are sharing it with others. So I'm going to send you the advocacy documenting form again, and along with the survey link. So let's take a 5-minute break. We will resume at 10:20. Ricky and Noreen, I'm going to make you co-hosts. Christine, I made you a co-host already, and we will resume again at 10:20. Thank you all so much. We're going to be talking about employment and hearing the amazing story from Ricky Broussard. Thank you all. We'll be back in a few minutes. Thank you.
See you soon.
Okay, Chris, no. Where did you go?
I'm staying on, Ricky. So we're good.
Yeah, okay, Noreen. Noreen. Hold on. Where did you go, Noreen? There you are. Let me make you
Making me a co-host.
Yeah, Noreen, why is it not giving me that option?
Is it a limited number of co-hosts or?
It shouldn't be. Oh, Ricky, somehow, that's weird. Noreen, it just says chat and pin video. Okay, so let me do this. I'm going to stop the recording and then start again.
Okay.
So let me stop the recording. Hold on 1 second.